This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer, joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, little action this weekend, something coming up next weekend, a lot of anniversaries. How are you tonight?
Hey, pretty good. I mean, a lot of good fights are taking place, and there's a lot of smaller fights as we build towards the Spence Crawford fight. But I think the Spence Crawford fight is boxing's equivalent of the Super Bowl. And these are games, playoff games, little playoff games as a lead-off into it, like this weekend, Julius Williams against Carlos Adames. You know, good little fights, you know, for a hardcore fight fan. But
speaking of some good little fights, we had a couple this past weekend with two high-profile guys. We had Regis Prograis, the WBC junior middleweight title holder, fight Danielito Zarilla. Prograis defending the title. He wins a 12-round split decision. There was a lot of controversy in the scoring. I saw highlights of the fight. I didn't see the whole fight. From what I saw, though, it looked to me as if Prograis won comfortably. Didn't look that great. He's always been hittable. I've talked to some guys who think he may be on the decline. I want to see him again before coming to any conclusion. He wants to fight Haney. If he doesn't beat Haney decisively, I'll agree he's on the decline. But I want to see how that goes. But anyhow, he won the title. He was knocked down in the first round. Zarilla wasn't given credit for it. Prograis said after the fight he was knocked down. He admitted it was a clean knockdown. He scored a knockdown. Again, Jack, not his best out, but he was up against a guy that can punch and was awkward.
Latirzo, you're basing your opinion on highlights when I scored the whole fight? I saw 20 minutes of it. I saw enough. Well, I scored it round by round. I had Prograis up 1 point, 6 rounds apiece. I'm not that sure it was a legitimate knockdown of Prograis that was called a slip. He was buckled, his knees dipped, and then he was kind of shoved down after that. No doubt the punch was the reason, the main reason he went down. But if it wasn't for the shove afterwards, chances are Prograis wasn't going to go down in the first round. So you could have called it either way, knockdown, not knockdown in the first round. I was disappointed in Prograis, and he's one of my favorite fighters.
Oh, he didn't look good, Jack. It was a bad night.
No, very, very disappointed. You could say Zarilla was looking to just survive. Well, then beat him decisively round after round. If a guy's looking just to survive, at least win rounds against him. Even if you're not looking good, win 9-10 rounds against a guy who's running and just looking to survive. On 2 of the cards, you could argue Prograis did it. The other card, 114, 113 for Zarilla, was closer to mine. I had Prograis just barely squeaking through. He did not look good. And you could tell the body language at the end of the fight. I mean, there was nothing to smile about. And what juice, Frank, does a Devin Haney matchup now have? Before this fight, you were going with Prograis to beat Devin Haney. I was reserving my opinion. Okay, I was reserving it. I wanted to see how he looked with Zarilla. By the way, I moved. I live near the Long Island Railroad now. Every once in a while, you're going to hear it coming in.
I like the nuance of the railroad.
Yeah. But I was reserving my opinion. Now I'm picking Devin Haney because Devin Haney can fight the same type of survival fight as Zarilla, but he could be much more effective and win a few of the rounds that Zarilla didn't. So,
Jack, I agree, but I think Zerillo is a hard guy. The way he was fighting, it's hard to look good against him. It's hard to get a guy and really work him over who's there to survive. I want to see Prograis against Haney. I will probably pick Prograis going in. If he lost, I wouldn't be shocked. I just know this much. Devin Haney does not like to be forced back. And we saw that with Lomachenko when he fought him. If he couldn't handle Lomachenko pushing him back, I think Prograis would even have more success pushing him back if he can get past that jab. But it wasn't a good night for Prograis. I was very high on him at one time. He's 32 years old. I'm not going to say he's on the decline, but he hasn't looked that great lately. It wasn't a good night for him, but he holds on to the title, and we'll see him live to fight another day, and he'll be in a big fight.
Let me just say, fighters can rebound. Let's remember, not long ago, Teofimo Lopez, he looked really bad against Sandor Martin, and he even asked in the ring afterwards, do I still have it?
And Lomachenko hadn't looked good for 4 years.
Right, and look.
Going into their fight.
And look at the way both guys bounced back, okay? So maybe that'll be the case with Prograis, but we'll see. It was a disappointing outing, though, anyway.
I agree, but Jack, you have to admit, there are some compelling fights with guys in between 135 and 140. And if Taylor moves up to 147, that takes one of them out. But you got Ramirez there, Prograis. You got some of the lightweights that may move up if Haney moves up. There's a lot going on between 135 and 140. And if they fight each other, we will get some great fights. Speaking of fights that aren't great, there was another big fight Saturday night that most people thought would go a couple rounds. And it went 77 seconds. Junior middleweight leading contender, Tim Tszyu, 23-0, 17, fought Carlos Ocampo, 35-3, 23, and he stopped him in 77 seconds into the first round. Now, Ocampo has not done well when he stepped up. He's most noted for beating Mosley Jr. He was stopped by Spence, I think, in 2017 in one round. A lot of people are saying, including Sean Porter, Jack, that now he thinks that Tim Tszyu should be the favorite going in against Tszyu. Or Tszyu should be the favorite going in against Jermall Charlo, which that fight is scheduled for September tentatively.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm going to say is momentum in boxing. I don't know how important it is. I mean, Charlo's had a bit of a layoff, but you wonder what's Charlo's dedication at this point, okay, compared to Tszyu's. We know Tszyu is targeting Charlo. He really wants to fight badly. He hasn't lost focus with the cancellations.
No.
Canceling out.
He has the momentum, there's no doubt.
He's on Charlo's rear end, and he's improving. Tszyu is improving as well. He's getting better all the time. And are we going to get the best of Charlo? What happens if we don't get the best of Charlo, which is a distinct possibility?
He hasn't fought in 13 months.
Now it's a pretty even matchup. I mean, Charlo is going to have to be favored, but he's not a clear favorite like he would have been before.
Jack, with me, I concede all that you said and all that Sean Porter said. But Charlo is the undisputed champ. He's not close to retiring. He still has legacy fights out there. I think he can get up for the fight as long as his health is okay. I think Tszyu has a very predictable style. I think it actually favors Charlo because Tszyu can only fight one way. He has to come forward. There are some guys where it's kind of suicide bringing the fight to them. Now, I'm not going to say Charlo is one of those guys, but I think in this matchup, Tszyu coming to him works to his favor, okay? Charlo has quicker hands. I think he's a better puncher. He's developed a good left hook, and I think if you press him, you actually are more vulnerable to his explosiveness. And so I'm going to go by styles and say right now, I would favor Charlo. But if he's not at the top of his game, he's going up against a guy who is hungry, confident, and determined. But if it's the best Charlo I've seen, that he would beat any version of Zoo. But I read nothing into the 77 seconds from Saturday night.
But what's with the Charlo brothers, Jamel and Jamal, being so inactive after their career paths have been going so well?
Well, Jamel has injury issues. We know that. Jamal, I'm not sure. I think some of it was promotion and trying to get the right fight, and he's going back and forth with different fights, and now he's talking about Canelo, which, of course, now's the time to fight Canelo.
What injury did Jamel Charlo suffer that was so bad to keep
Didn't he hurt his wrist or his hand?
Yeah, but if you're an athlete, if you're a baseball player, if you're a football player, are you going to stay out the whole season if you hurt yourself in spring training? Unless it's an Achilles tendon injury, something really devastating, you're going to be back at some point.
Wait a second, Jack. Wait a second. We're talking about a pro boxer. If he has an injured hand, that's a big deal. Is Peyton Manning going to be effective with an injured hand?
He'll be playing.
I think that's a big injury when you're a fighter.
But to be off a full year, Paulie Malignaggi had several hand surgeries. He kept getting operated on it. He kept getting back in the ring. Okay.
I can see that.
Ray Leonard had bad hands. Muhammad Ali had bad hands.
Mayweather's had bad hands.
Mayweather, but those guys fought. Okay?
Well, Jack, those guys were a different breed than these guys. I see that point. But look, it's not a good look for Charlo. He has a big mouth. His brother has a big mouth, and they don't fight. But Jermell, to me, of the two, has improved more recently. He's cleaned out an entire division. And every time he's pressed in a big spot, he answers the call. And I think a guy like Zoo will motivate him, and I think he'll be as up for the fight as he can be. And again, he's had 30 fights. He doesn't need to be active and fight all the time. If he has a good training camp, he can shake the rust off. He knows what he has to do. He's fighting a guy where it's all about conditioning. It's not about deception, fighting Tim Zoo. So I don't think that'll be a big deal for Jamel. But I have to admit, Zoo has got a little bit of game now. He's got a nice little right hand that he sneaks in. It was effective against Ocampo. I mean, as Joe Bergman just said on the thread, it's going to be a very fan-friendly fight, but I don't know about Zoo's chin, and I think Charlo has a good chin. He's a better puncher. He has two hands. He's got a nice jab, and I think he's more explosive. As much as I will probably root for Zoo, I fear Charlo will win, and he'll be favored.
I'm still going for Charlo in the fight, but I'm going to tell you, if they don't fight this year and somehow Charlo's inactive and it lingers into next year, I'm going to be switching over to Zoo at that point.
Okay. I hope they fight, Jack. That's all I care about because it's a big fight. It's for a unified title. And let's face it, Zoo has earned the shot to be the second guy in the division. So that fight will settle a lot. I'm looking forward to it. Hope it happens in September. But before September, we're going to have the Crawford-Spence fight, Jack. And I remember when it was signed, and you and I even talked about this. It's lost some of its luster. Those guys are making headlines every day, and I am getting sucked into it and drawn into it, and I can't wait to see this fight. It's clearly the best fight in boxing. There are quotes that these guys are making all over. They're talking about legacy. Spence said this is the biggest fight since Leonard Hearn's the first fight. So he knows what's on the line. Crawford says, judge me by this fight. Forget the rest of my career. So these guys are doing a good job selling the fight for two guys that can fight their ass off but have no personality.
Let me tell you why we're so looking forward to the fight. Not only because of the matchup. Normally the fight would have lost a little of its luster. But look at all the other top pound-for-pound guys in boxing. They're not fighting. Fury's not fighting Usyk. Bival's not fighting Beterbiev. Haney's not fighting Stevenson. So at least we're getting a mega matchup with these two. So we forgive them. We forgive them because everyone else is cheating on us, Frank. All the other top guys aren't giving us what we want, so we forgive Spence and Crawford for delaying it. We're welcoming them back into the fold.
And plus, Jack, they went out of their way and they made the fight. Remember all the conversations we had? Hey, if you really want to fight, you guys will get together, you'll put the heat on your people, and you'll make the fight. And they did it.
But in all fairness, okay, the reason they're getting together, they have no other options. I don't want to hear about this legacy stuff. Yeah, of course it's big for their legacy. It's major for their legacy, but that's not why they're taking the fight, okay? Because they ran out of options. Spence had no one else to really fight.
Well, he thought he could fight Thurman.
Oh, that's a spot, Keith Thurman, and Keith Thurman's tough to negotiate with.
Right, he wants $10 million.
He's Mr. Inactive himself. He doesn't really want to fight Keith Thurman. He wants to just cash in now and then. It's all about business, making a little money when he can. So he had no one really to fight Spence. Crawford had no one really to fight. Who is he going to fight? His WBO mandatory, Alex Rocha? I mean, would that have made, who would have cared about that?
And Jack, let's face it. I know you don't want to say it because I was on this a long time ago, but the elephant in the room is still Boots. And they both knew that they'd have to face him. So it was better to get the legacy fight under their belt, and maybe the winner moves up and chases Charlo or Zoo if he beats Charlo.
Well, Boots Ennis has been a little bit disappointing to me. We were talking about momentum early in the show. What's with his momentum, Frank? Boots Ennis. I mean, he was disappointing in his last outing, winning a lackluster decision. He's fighting again next month, and he's got to create a buzz again. No one is talking about him outside of the hardcore fight fan. So he's not putting.
Jack, but you got to. But there's one, and I agree with all you said. There's just one thing that you left out. Nobody wants to fight Boots because they look at it. There's nothing to gain by beating him, and the risk is too big and too risky for their career. And if he mutilates them, then they have to go to the back of the line. So Boots is having a hard time getting fights. I do think that last fight against Chukazaran, I think that even though it went the distance and he didn't look good, he still won almost every round. You could see that he still has the tools and he's a threat. And I still think if I had money to invest and a chance to buy in the Boots, to me, that's a buy. It's not a sell or a hold. It's definitely a buy. And I do think that Crawford and Spence look at him. They know him. They followed him from the amateurs, and they know he's a bad dude, and he's somebody they're both going to have to deal with. So let's get our legacy fight out of the way. And they're going to do it. And it's like, Jack, can you imagine if something happened and one of them gets hurt in training and is postponed, like with the Ensue Fulton fight, how down we'll be? I'm counting the days to that fight.
Yeah, if I'm Boots Ennis and I'm absolutely confident I could either beat Spence or Crawford, I announce I'll be ready to fill in and just for a couple of $1 million. That's it. Okay? Just a small fraction of what Spence and Crawford are going to get paid, and I'll fight either guy for that sum of money.
Jack, he can say that, but you and I both know in actuality, there's no chance of that because let's just say
he beats him. Now he's the guy.
But wait a second. Let's say Spence gets hurt, and Boots said that Crawford's not going to fight Boots before fighting Spence because what if he lost to Boots? There goes all the money in the legacy fight.
Oh, no, it wouldn't happen because Crawford wouldn't get the same amount of money he'd be getting. Right. Spence. But I was saying if all factors were equal, and you forget about it. I have these crazy ideas. Like on the past show, I thought Crawford should fight once a month against mediocre opposition. Fight on ESPN for Top Rank. Do it the old-fashioned way. People would love it. A fight of the month, Terrence Crawford. And at the end of the year, it would be awesome. He'd be in a class by himself. This guy fought every month. At least I'm fighting. I'm an old-fashioned fighter. People would love that. But it's not. But like you said, the things like
before we leave Boots, I'm sorry, before we leave Crawford and Spence, before we move on to the next topic, if they were fighting this coming Saturday night, who would you pick?
We talked about Crawford and Spence.
Right.
Oh, my pick is out there already. I'm not waiting till the end. I mean,
You're still going to go with Crawford?
yeah, I think it's going to be a barn burn of a fight, a sensational fight. I think Spence is going to get off to a nice lead, win 4 of the first 5 rounds, and then it's going to heat up and be a fight for the ages. I think Crawford stops him in round 12.
Okay, we'll keep a little tab on that as the fight draws near. I still like Crawford to win the fight, probably by stoppage. All right, there's some other news. Kind of fugazi news, but we got to talk about it. Teofimo Lopez says he's retired. Where are you with that?
Broke. He doesn't have any money. Teofimo Lopez is broke, basically. I shouldn't say doesn't have any money. He has some money. Certainly not enough to last him a lifetime. Certainly has no financial security. He himself said he got paid $1 million
Yes.
for his last fight against Josh Taylor. He was broke going into that fight, we heard. That fight helped him pay off some bills after taxes and paying off other people and this and that. I mean, Teofimo badly needs to fight. Teofimo thinks he's being smart here by saying, I'm retired. Now all going to chase after him and give him these incredible money offers. So he thinks he's increasing his value. Meanwhile,
He's pulling a Mayweather.
Meanwhile, he says he's retired, but he wants to stay in boxing, use his talents to help out in other ways. I'm not saying he's not a smart guy. I actually bumped into him a year ago at the Boxing Writers Dinner. He was honored as Fight of the Year retroactive because of COVID by a little bit.
Right.
Trainers Award. And it was the end of the night and everyone's filling out. And Teofimo all of a sudden stops, and he didn't know me from a hole in the head. He sees me smiling, and I'm talking with him, and I got the feeling he would have went out for a slice of pizza with me at that moment. That's the feeling I got, you know? See, he really was a good kid in that circumstance. But I think Teofimo's got to lay it on. Like, why give up your belts? Let them strip you of your darn belts. But why?
You know, it's a shame, Jack. It's a shame that these guys, they just don't have the benefit of hindsight. Right now, you could make a case that Teofimo is the hottest fighter in the sport. And now, with the oven hot, he should go for the big fight. He has momentum. He has a little leverage. And people want to see him fight. There are 3 ingredients that will stimulate your career and make and the process continues. I think he should be out there clamoring for a fight. He has the belt. There are guys that can move up to challenge him. There are guys at 140, the Ramirez's, the Prograis. They would all be big fights. And if he won them, his stature would be even bigger. But now is the time to strike. Look how he went on the back burner after beating Lomachenko. See, these guys don't understand.
Wait, don't give me Jose Ramirez there, because he's had his opportunities. He could have fought Prograis, okay? He was offered his opportunity. He backed out of that fight because he didn't want to take the challenges.
You missed my point, Jack. My point is Ramirez is a credible name who has only lost 1 time, and he has a belt. And it's a winnable fight. And nobody could say that Teofimo was taking the easy route by fighting him. That's all I'm saying. It's a credible fight.
What belt does he have? I'm missing something here. I admit I don't know all the champions, but what belt does he have? Does he have an interim belt? An intercontinental belt?
I'll tell you in a second. Keep talking. I'll tell you. I forget what belt he has, but
what does it matter what he holds if even I'm questioning it? I know the capabilities. He's a heck of a fighter. But the bottom line, he did lose to Josh Taylor.
Josh Taylor, that's his only loss.
Right. He's a good fighter, but it's not a major fight. Devin Haney Teofimo would be a major fight.
But Jack, it's a title fight. Nobody could say that Teofimo is taking the easy route. That's all I'm saying.
And Tiafimo, and if he wins a big fight at junior welterweight, and then he decides to move up to welterweight or whatever, but big fights are there, definitely. But kudos to Crawford and Spence. At least they're fighting, even though they basically had no alternatives after. Well, these other guys are going to learn it, as well. You're looking at Beterbiev, for example. Him and Bivol, they're not fighting one another. And Beterbiev's fighting who? Callum Smith? I mean, who wants to see these fights? A guy who Canelo even beat decisively. Pretty good fighter from England, but that's not
My bad, Jack. Ramirez doesn't hold a belt. It's Rolando Romero I was thinking of.
Right. I didn't know what belt. Listen.
But Jack, the fans care about the belts. I know you and I don't, but at least he has to stay active. He can't have that lack and that layoff like he did after he beat Lomachenko, and then he fights Kambosos and gets beat. He's hot now.
Now, Kambosos has a fight coming up against Max Hughes. If he's successful in that fight, him and Teofimo would be a natural for a rematch. I mean, Kambosos is talking about it now.
That's another option. Yes, that's another option.
It would be an interesting fight. I mean, you could put it on pay-per-view if you have a really good undercard supporting it. The fight itself would be pay-per-view worthy. But who knows? Maybe Teofimo can be turned into a major star. I mean, he certainly has the personality, the charisma.
Has the personality and the skill, and he can punch.
Still, right.
And he's a great interview.
And he has 2 signature wins, Lomachenko and Josh Taylor. Listen, his 2 biggest wins are bigger wins than anything Crawford or Spence have done.
Think about that, Jack. Right? You're right. He has the best win at 135 and 140.
2 wins that are better than anything.
And the loss is very close, so he does have a cachet. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, that question.
And he can fight. And you know what's funny? He was fighting with Timothy Bradley because of some of the things he said. And I noticed that Bradley recently commented that Teofimo really fought good. Looks like he has his head together. He wants to see if he can do it again. And I thought Bradley was very measured in his assessment. But even though there's bad blood between them, he did give him his props.
But what I don't understand is, what can Teofimo complain about? His performances leading into the Josh Taylor fight weren't good. The last couple at least. So if Bradley criticized him, was Bradley really wrong?
Well, Bradley said that at 140, he was dog crap compared to the other guys. Now he has to reel that back, and he did. And that's what happens when you turn in a good performance like Lopez did. Nobody is going to, question you after that. You showed brain, skill, smarts, determination. Haven't heard anything about Josh Taylor, Jack, since then. I think he's going to move up to 147, and I don't like that.
He is, and I don't think he's going to make any noise there. I think he has one big fight there, the Jack Hadrow fight. Win that fight, and then, be very careful how you go about things. I don't think Josh Taylor has much of a future in the sport.
No, I think he's burned out. All right, Jack, another week has gone by, and nothing substantive in the heavyweight division. Tyson Fury has become a joke. And his 2 big wins over Klitschko and Wilder are all but forgotten.
Yeah, Tyson Fury, I mean, such a talented big guy. And
so hard to like, though.
There was some talk of him being rated as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Not based quite on accomplishment, but he was maybe trending in that direction. Because it's rare that you'd have a big man with such skill and such movement, such charisma. He could punch as well. But you get the feeling Tyson Fury just doesn't want to box. It's as simple as that. He really doesn't enjoy it that much.
And he's all over the place, Jack. He's talking about fighting John Jones. He's talking about Francis Ngannou. Then he's talking about maybe fighting Wilder a 4th time. Then the Joshua stuff was going on. It's like the guy is very hard to like. And here's what happens. When you get a guy like him who's had some big moments, and then they turn people off, What I found myself doing lately is I go back and I look at his record. And when you look at Tyson Fury's record, he has two guys on there. Granted, Klitschko was at the end of his career, but he held the title for 10 years and Fury beat him. Then he fights Wilder 3 times. I think, he did win 2 of the 3. I thought he won the first fight. But other than Wilder and Klitschko, he has no legacy. Now, we can talk about how he matches up with guys, and I do think he's a problem for anybody from John L. Sullivan to Lennox Lewis. But if we're going to rank him on legacy, what's his legacy? He beat an old Klitschko, and he beat a Wilder who can't box but only punch.
Yeah, it would be like Tyson. We hardly knew you if he retired now and never boxed again. You know, he'd be one of these sensations like a James Dean or something. Well, a Steve Prefontaine, you know, the great runner from Oregon who died in a car crash at the age of 24, who had this tremendous following. They made a couple of movies on his life. He would kind of be remembered in a way. Tyson Fury is more of a personality than as a fighter.
All right, let me ask you this. Let's just say, now you like to play this game. I'm going to do it with you. Let's just say one of two things happens. Tyson Fury never fights again, or he fights one more time, and it's against Usyk, and he wins, and then he retires. So let's say he retires undefeated. You do realize if he retires undefeated, he's going to go down as one of the all-time greats. How are you with that?
Well, the critics are going to say he had a draw on his record. And some people are going to say, well, he really won that first Wilder fight. But then they could point to a fight against the British fighter John McDermott, which early in his career, which nearly everyone at ringside thought Fury actually lost that fight with a little.
But that'll mean nothing, Jack. That's like a lot of people thinking Mayweather lost to to Castillo. He's undefeated.
Yeah,
and he beat Wilder twice after the draw, and he stopped him.
Frank, I admire fighters who get out at the right time. And Joe Calzaghe and Andre Ward, I feel, got out at the right time. But you want to know something? When you talk about all-time greats, you can't put them in that category unless you're talking about the super middleweight division. But if you talk about all-time greats in general, and if we're talking about the 50 greatest fighters of all time, Ward and Calzaghe don't make the cut because their career wasn't quite complete. Okay? I mean, they kind of stopped a little bit short. I mean, sometimes a fighter stops a little bit short, but he could still be rated with the greats like a Rocky Marciano, for example. But all in all, I mean...
Or Gene Tunney.
Gene Tunney.
Even though I don't rate him at heavyweight.
No. Gene Tunney stopped a little short. That's the point I'm trying to make. Had he continued on a couple of more years, let's say he made 3 more title defenses, his status would have been great as an all-time great.
Well, he fought one time after the long count, and he beat Haney, right?
Tom Haney,
Tom Haney, right?
Tom Haney.
So, but I'm just saying, a lot of people aren't going to like this. A lot of old school guys, but if Fury retires undefeated, Jack, he's going to be mentioned with some of the guys who are immortal, and the argument's going to be nobody beat him. And if you go head-to-head on matchups against guys from the 50s and 60s, he matches up pretty good with those guys.
I'll tell you this little slight small trivia. Joe Messi, undefeated for his whole career. At one point, one of the sanctioning bodies, don't hold me to it, I think it was the WBC, I might be wrong, had him rated number one contender. Okay?
Right.
And then he had to retire because his license was taken away because of the bleeding of the brain. Let's say he grabbed the title. It was basically made easy for him. And he was like, instead of Charles Martin, let's say Joe Messi got a belt, okay? Let's say even lesser guys. Let's say that happened. And then he retires unbeaten. Some people may have pointed out.
Nobody remembers him, Jack. You
No,
got to win some big fights
no.
at the elite level. Fury can say that he did that.
Yeah, well, yeah, he did. He did. Yeah, you can't argue.
Now, we talk about things. I had some things outlined that we'll get to that, but you just made me think of something. You talked about Lennox Lewis. In 2 days, it'll be the 20-year anniversary of his fight with Klitschko, and he retired after that. Now, Lennox Lewis is another guy that got out at the perfect time with his health, his wealth, his title, and his respect. Lennox Lewis, like Larry Holmes, the further you get away from his career, the better he looks. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's funny about legacies, Frank. You never know how it's going to turn out. Some fighters could lose a number of fights later in their career. It doesn't affect their legacy hardly at all. And some of them, Jim Jeffries, could suffer one loss after being out of the ring 6 years against Jack Johnson. And that damaged his legacy irreparably.
The problem was, though, Jack, that was his signature fight.
A tongue-tied. He had
people remember Jeffries for fighting Johnson, whereas the other guys you're talking about, and I'm assuming you meant the Alis, the Joe Louis, Robinson, and Leonard, they won their signature fights.
But Ali's legacy wasn't hurt losing his last two fights at 3.
No.
And it should have been, but people didn't want it to hurt Ali's legacy.
Why should it have hurt it, Jack?
Well, let me tell you, if Ali had won those fights, if Ali had beaten Larry Holmes, we would be pointing to Ali's greatness as that's an example. Look at the way after a 2-year layoff at age, what was he,
38, almost 39.
Come back and beat Larry Holmes. We would be giving Ali all the credit in the world. So why do we give guys free passes when they don't accomplish, certain things?
Jack, I want to tell you why. Ali at 38 lost to Holmes, an all-time great. Okay? Holmes at 38 lost to Tyson, an all-time great. Tyson at 38 lost to Kevin McBride. Nobody is going to hold that against Tyson, just like we can't hold Holmes losing to Tyson against him or Ali losing to Holmes against him. It's what did you do in your prime? Ali has all those wins in his prime, as did Lewis. And since we're talking about Lennox Lewis won his signature fights. And when he retired, Jack, I loved it because you know what? I really believe if he would have fought Klitschko in a rematch, I think Klitschko might have beat him. I think Lennox, and I'm going to tell you why, because I think at that time, it was right after he beat Tyson. He got the monkey off his back. I'm talking about Lewis. And I think he realized in the Klitschko fight, number one, Klitschko was better than he thought. And I think Lewis realized after that fight, I was lucky to win. And I don't know if I have it in me to do what it takes to get up to beat this guy. And I'm not going to give him a chance to put my name on his record because then I'll never get credit for winning the first fight, where on Lennox's Lewis' worst night, when he was never heavier, he beat the guy who was presumed to be next, and you can make a case actually was next. So Lewis, to me, got out at the perfect time. Perfect time.
He did. And he deserves a ton of credit. It was a question with Lennox Lewis. He didn't have the motivation at the end of his career. You're right.
And don't you respect that, Jack? I respect that.
I do. He got everything out of boxing. He got out at the right time. Certain fighters, like who you regard as the greatest pound for pound ever, and I don't disagree with you, Sugar Ray Robinson. I think a good part of Robinson's legacy, which no one talks about, all those losses when he was over 40 years of age, but he was never stopped.
Never stopped.
He fought a bunch of rated guys, future world champions, and they beat him. I mean, but top of the line fighters. But they
never
didn't stop him. He always went the distance. And, it says a lot.
It's just a shame, though, because when the younger guys come along and they see 19 losses, they think about how good could he have been, but they don't know how to read a record, and they can't talk about guys they didn't see. But Lewis is one of the few guys that got out at the right time, and I respect him for that. I think he's one of the all-time greats, and the anniversary of that fight is coming up. It's in 2 days. 20 years Lennox Lewis has been gone, and never once was he close to coming back. And we both know he was offered a lot of money to come back at different points of his career, and he declined.
He said he was tempted, or I think all champions are tempted. Marvin Hagler used to say when he decided he wasn't going to box again, he kept away from the gyms because he knew once he went to the gym,
it would get the juices flowing.
Yeah.
Jack, this weekend, I want to say a couple more topics, but we have to discuss one, and that's your favorite fighter. Edgar Berlanga hasn't fought in a year. He's fighting Jason Quigley, 20-2, 14 knockouts in a super middleweight bout this weekend at Madison Square Garden. He has a grandiose opinion and vision that if he wins this fight, he's going to get a shot at Canelo. I think he's going to win the fight. Quigley loses when he steps up. He was stopped by Demetrius Andrade. There's no doubt to me that Berlanga is going to win the fight, probably by stoppage. He needs a stoppage win, but he's not fighting Canelo.
Eddie Hearn will make that match if he can. Eddie Hearn said Berlanga has to stop Quigley to be in the Canelo sweepstakes. Why is Berlanga in any type of sweepstakes? I mean, I kid you not, Frank. I'm not going to start giving names, but I can get 15, 20 guys in and around Berlanga's weight class who would beat him. If I were a matchmaker, and I would find 15, 20 guys to beat him.
Okay, let me ask you this. Are they undefeated?
Well,
okay. Berlanga brings undefeated. Are they good looking?
Berlanga, he's a good kid. Wait. Let me say this. He's he's modest, quiet. He's a good kid. This isn't anything personal in any way, shape, or form with Edgar Berlanga. I'll be delighted for him to prove me wrong. I really will. But he's just not that good. He's a better than average fighter. You're talking about matching a better than average fighter.
But Jack, it's all about narratives.
The crap.
Jack, it's all about narratives. A good-looking guy that's undefeated, that can punch, that has an Hispanic following, that is magic today. And what you said about Berlanga, I told you when I was in Florida, not this past winter, the winter before, we took an Uber, and the guy driving the Uber, somehow boxing came up, and he said he was Edgar Berlanga's cousin. And he said that he was worried about him as far as his social life goes and things that were all around him, all the chaos. And then I just read today, and Jack, I don't want to hold this against him, but I think it's a bad sign when he talks about, I love my jewelry, my car costs 400 grand, my watch costs 250. I don't give a F. I'm going to be ready. I'm the top dog, and I'm going to take over. I don't like that mindset when guys are spending money like it's water. They think it's never going to end, and I think they lose focus on what's important. And I kind of worry about that with Berlanga.
I didn't know that, okay? Obviously, he's either not being given good advice or not listening to the good advice he's being given. In any event, it's a bad sign because Berlanga's not going to be in line for big paydays going.
And Jack, he's one knockout loss from being yesterday's news.
That's good. He's not that good. He might lose to Quigley. It might happen. I don't think it's going to happen because Quigley's like the top draft choice that never panned out for a team. Didn't pan out. You stick with him a while. You keep waiting to see what he could do. He was outclassed by Demetrius Andrade in a couple of. I mean, it was
2 rounds.
I mean, it was so he was out of his element.
But Jack, then again, we look at Berlanga. 16-0, 16 first-round knockouts, and then in the last 4 fights, he went the distance.
Except those distance fights, he win against an Alfredo Angulo, Steve Rolls. I mean, guys who are, fair fighters, decent, fair fighters.
But if he's the real deal, they shouldn't be going the distance with him.
No, and he should be completely dominating them. He shouldn't be biting opponents on the shoulder and stuff like that because he's frustrated. He's just not that good. But listen, if he can stop quickly, Eddie Hearn's a smart promoter. Eddie Hearn's not going to risk him against anyone else, and they're going to look to make the match because Canelo will jump on the match because Canelo wants nothing but easy fights going forward. Canelo isn't interested in taking any risks anymore in his career.
Jack, you really think they can sell that fight, Berlanga against Canelo? I mean, I guess it would sell, but can Canelo pull that off and get away with it?
They can sell Canelo, I guess, with just about anyone because he's Canelo. And they could say Berlanga's unbeaten Puerto Rican, scored 16 first-round knockouts in a row to start his career, show highlights of that. Yeah, I mean, they can pump it up because Berlanga is, he's charismatic. I mean, you got to give him his due as far
I've been telling you that for the last year.
No, but I've seen him, but I know what the reality is. I don't care how much.
But Jack, the narrative is what puts him in the spot more so than the reality. We know he's nothing special, but we know it's all about this, and they can sell him and promote him. But I think Canelo's at the point where a lot of people are turning on him. He has to fight either Bivol or Benavidez next, or I don't think he gets a pass. Maybe Jamal Charlo, he could fight and get a pass. But if he doesn't fight one of those 3 guys, I think the public's going to be tough on him and maybe punish him a little bit at the box office.
I could see that happening because the latest Badu Jack, who holds a cruiserweight belt.
And he wants it at 180.
He wants it at 180. What the heck is he talking about, Canelo? We have weight classes for a reason. How can you call it a title match if you're changing the weight?
Exactly.
Then all these weight divisions are pure silliness to me as is. Like the difference between flyweight 112 and bantamweight 118 is 6 pounds. We have a super flyweight division, a 3-pound weight difference. And what Canelo's doing is complete nonsense. In the Bivol rematch, he wants a light heavyweight. He gave Bivol the same offer, $5 million.
That's sad. $5 million. That's sad.
Same as before. Now, had Bivol accepted that offer, Canelo would have found a reason not to go ahead with the fight still. He would have maybe made the conditions so unbearable for Bivol until he said the heck with it. You were talking
okay, so Jack,
Frank,
we both like Berlanga, right?
Yeah, I've got to like Berlanga. I think Quigley's just been so disappointing in his career. He shows signs where he looks good, but even Berlanga would have done better against Demetrius Andrade than Quigley did. At least Berlanga would have won some rounds before, getting stopped in, 8 or 9 rounds by Andrade.
Joe Bergman, he makes a point. What I've been saying, knockout artists always get more ink. Berlanga is one of those guys, even though he's been extended. Joe, we think that, but I'll tell you this much. There's a lot of heat on Berlanga because if Quigley goes the distance, it's not a good look. He's got to win and look like a killer again.
Frank, if Quigley goes the distance, it'll do for Berlanga's career what it did for Anthony Joshua's going the distance with Jermaine Franklin. Now,
excellent point. I agree.
Had Joshua knocked out Franklin quickly, we would be talking about Joshua on this show now because he would have been creating a buzz. Oh, Joshua.
You're right.
Let's see what he could do going forward. But he won a lackluster decision. And our opinion towards Joshua became lackluster as a result.
All right, Jack. So we both like Berlanga, and I think we both agree it wouldn't be a shock if he went the distance, but he really needs to win by a stoppage to get people talking.
I think if I have to come up with a prediction in the fight, my feeling will be Berlanga in 8 rounds or so, but it's unpredictable. Berlanga might stop him in 1 round.
Yeah, we don't know.
But that doesn't mean, I underestimated Berlanga.
No, not at all. He's fighting a guy he should win convincingly. He should beat him convincingly.
We don't know what Quigley's going to bring to the table. Quigley has a chance of winning the fight, or Quigley has a chance of getting stopped in 1 round. But Berlanga should win the fight. These distance fights Berlanga had recently, it's going to help him if he's in a long fight going forward.
And let's face it, we know that Berlanga is going to get all the home cooking when it comes to scoring, because nobody wants to see Jason Quigley move forward. Or Berlanga, there's big fights. All right, one more topic. I expected you to give me a hard time about this, but I'm not going to let you. Tomorrow is the 43rd anniversary of the first Leonard Duran fight for the WBC welterweight title. In my opinion, Duran beating Leonard is one of the top 5 wins, at least in the last 50 years, scored by one fighter. And I think it was probably the biggest win any fighter scored of the 80s, during the 80s. What do you think of that fight? What are your memories?
I saw it in one of the movie theaters on closed circuit.
As did I.
I thought the decision could have gone either way. I was never the biggest Duran fan, for whatever reason. I mean, I admired his greatness. Don't misunderstand me. I never underrated him. When I say a fan, I'm talking about a fighter who I would root for. I don't know what it was. And I thought the fight with Sugar Ray, I actually had Sugar Ray up 8 rounds to 7 and gave Duran a 2-point round when he wobbled Ray in the second.
In the second round?
Right. So I had it a draw on my scorecard, but no argument if you say Duran won the fight. But I don't want to hear, you're crazy, this or that with Duran. The mystique of Duran gave him the benefit of the doubt with judges in so many fights. It gave him the benefit of the doubt with judges in the first Leonard fight, a fight that could have gone either way. It gave him the benefit of the doubt when he lost the decision to Benitez. 2 judges had it, 1 point for
Benitez. And he was clearly outboxed.
And with Hagler, too. Hagler had to win the last couple of rounds.
Hagler clearly won that fight.
Right, and Hagler won 10 of the 15 rounds legitimately.
But, Jack, that Leonard Duran fight, that was a brutal fight physically. The infighting was monumental, and Leonard hit Duran with some shots to the body. I think
get Berlanga off here. What's with our producer now? This is better with the timing with Leonard. Come on. I think that I lost my train of thought now, Jack. You're interrupting me. I'm going to take you to task, Laterzo, after this one. We'll finish talking about Leonard and Duran, and then I'll take you to task.
Okay. The infighting was monumental. Leonard hit Duran with some shots that I think lifted him off the ground. I thought going in that Leonard was going to win convincingly. After he stopped Davey Boy Green in March and fighting Duran 3 months later, I thought Leonard was on a roll. I thought he was just too big, too good, and I just didn't think Duran could move up 12 pounds and beat a legitimate, great welterweight who could fight, who could punch, and I just didn't think he could do it. And I disagree with you. I think Duran won the fight. I think it was close. I think that it was his Frazier Ali fight. He was on a mission, and he knew, think about this. He knew, like Frazier knew, when he fought Ali, this is the fight I will be remembered for. This is the golden child. This is the star. If I can't beat him, they're going to throw at my face. I think Frazier had the same mindset with Ali. And Jack, think about this, and then I'll shut up. Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Leonard, Duran, Hearns. Ali and Frazier are Duran and Leonard. Their fights are competitive. They're the fights everybody wants to see. And once they both conquered the guy they wanted to see, once Ali got the upper hand on Frazier and Leonard got the upper hand on Duran, here comes the destroyer, Foreman and Leonard, Foreman and Hearns. Foreman, 40-0, 37 knockouts. Hearns, 32-0, 30 knockouts. And it was like Ali and Foreman was like they had to beat the killer. After they got rid of their nemesis, they had to beat the seek and destroy killer in Foreman and Hearns. And when I see those three, I see that correlation. And in both cases, the pretty boy, boxer, superstar emerged.
Yeah, you said Duran was moving up. Duran had moved up already, beat Carlos Palomino.
He had 8 fights above 145 when he fought Leonard.
Right. Listen, let me ask you this, Frank. Had Leonard fought a tactically different fight the way he said he should have, not letting his emotions get the better of him, and had he boxed Duran all fight, hadn't been as emotional, kept a level head, do you think he wins in Montreal?
No, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Duran didn't let him. Duran got in his head and did that. Leonard had to go through that before he could figure out how to fight him in New Orleans 5 months later. But Duran did that. He got in his head. He insulted him. Leonard wanted to knock him out, and he ended up going toe-to-toe with him. And I also think, Jack, that Leonard, I think he became a man in that fight, and I think that paved the way for the rest of his career. Duran cut the ring off really good and was forcing him back inside. And even though I don't think Leonard would ever admit this, I really do think a lot of that fight was waged on the inside because I think Leonard knew that he couldn't keep Duran outside. So instead of trying to do that and miss and get countered, let him come to me inside where I can kind of see everything and just use my weight and try to be the bigger guy and fight him out here. And I just think he just didn't quite have enough.
We don't have a lot of time left over, but Frank, I'm surprised at you. Anniversary fights. You're telling me Duran Leonard. You know what today is? 87 years ago.
Lewis.
Was it Lewis and Schmeling knocking out Lewis? You talk about the greatest wins in boxing history. That was Schmeling's win. Was one of the greatest upsets, put it that way.
That was definitely up there, and I think
comparable to Douglas beating Tyson, Braddock beating Bear, comparable. Okay, Lewis was a destroyer. He was invincible during that time on the way up, and to get derailed by Schmeling like that.
But I'll tell you what, Lewis made one of the best adjustments ever in history for the rematch. Yeah. He took that space away, took away the right hand, and mutilated Schmeling. And since we're talking about anniversaries, yesterday was 60 years ago that Ali went to London as Cassius Clay and got knocked on his butt by Henry Cooper.
Yeah, that was one of the great myths in boxing history, that between rounds Ali's glove was torn. It had to get replaced. There was a 5-minute delay.
Yeah, Jack, I've heard 5 and 7 minutes. Was like the round was extended in between like 5 seconds. That was it. Yeah. They never changed the gloves.
Yeah, 3 seconds. It had no bearing on anything, but it was a great myth that took off in time. And I grew up actually believing that myth that happened.
I did too, until I actually got film of the fight and I realized there's nothing there going on.
You know what I was thinking is another myth. We don't have much time. I also grew up believing that after Harry Greb roughed up Gene Tunney and beat him in the first fight, that Tunney dominated the remaining few contests.
No, you can make a case they're 2-2-1.
Right, you can make a case Greb got the bet overall of it, which we'll maybe talk a little if we have time next week. What would have happened had Greg fought Jack Dempsey? You know what, down to our last minute, so we'll need more than a minute for that. But I'm not saying Greb would have beaten him, but I'm saying Greb would have been in with a very good chance of beating Dempsey.
Jack, we really can't say because we weren't around at the time. It seems back then the people thought Greb had a shot. All I can tell you is this. from what I've read over the years and from what I've observed, my intuition tells me that Dempsey takes care of Greb in about 5 rounds.
Well, Greb did
Just
quite
too strong. Greb's not a runner. It's going to come down to who gets there with more, and I just think Dempsey was just overwhelming physically.
Greb's not a runner, but we got to run now because we ran out of time.
Good segue, Jack. Great show. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next week.